Look, tour campaigns are popular. There is a reason that Italy, the Netherlands and Korea are all frequently played nations. But while indeed there are plenty of locations where one can set up such an endeavour, a place often overlooked for a campaign of this nature is Egypt. And there is good reason for it. I will get into why it's overlooked later, but let's also be clear, me saying go play tour in Egypt wouldn't be exactly worth the video. As such, they were going to add a little bit of spice of life to the environment with some trademark German engineering courtesy of the shenanigans that EU4 allows us to partake in. With that said, before we get into the video, just a quick pit stop to say that a like would be appreciated and a subscription would be amazing, but enough self-shilling, what am I talking about? Well, here we are in the game, and indeed this is Egypt. I'm hoping you're already aware of that, but just wanted to, make sure. The Egypt region, dare I say, is pretty culturally unified, with Egyptian being the one culture you need to accept, and the good thing about that is that if you do switch into Egyptian culture, you can get dev costs and primary modifiers and really use them. Regarding the terrain, of course, the place that you want to dev to the moon is going to be the Nile Delta itself. Of course, there are some deserts around you which are not good for development. Plus 50 dev cost on terrain desert is pretty bad after all. However, you also have a good core of farmlands in the middle here, with some dry lands to support them, so certainly decent options enough for your development. The Nile River is indeed going to constitute the main part of your strength, and this is further enhanced by the fact that you actually have quite a few bonuses in the actual provinces themselves. You have 4 granary of the Mediterranean provinces, which is quite nice, as well as 3 centers of trade relatively closely clustered to each other. Regarding the defense of the Egyptian land, well, this is going to be a bit more tougher. You should absolutely fort Sinai. It's one of the few locations in terms of blocking off access to Egypt from the east. And indeed, if you want to expand a little bit more and secure Palestine over here, Tabuk, or into Transjordan, these mountains are going to also form excellent defensive barriers if you want to put up like 5 forts there. From a trade point of view, securing Medina and Mecca can also be a good shout, but if you're trying to do a tour campaign, I'd actually suggest having a March subject own these 2 states and letting them basically exist in a send trade power to you and actually really focus on the Egyptian core lands. After all, it's a tour campaign, we don't want to have too much land as it were. While at the same time, it is good to, actually run your trade node. In the south though, it's a bit harder to defend yourself. You have pretty much open desert here, so outside of having very little supply, people can just walk into your country. The same can be said for this state here, within the area of Benghazi and the Cyrenaica state. I'm not going to be able to pronounce that very well. Anyway, my advice for this is take the full state, shove the permanent defensive edict on that, put in 4 forts with ramparts, and that's about as good as you'll get. Expensive, sure, but it's probably going to be a best way of defending from the west, and the same for the deserts in here. If indeed you want to set up more March subjects in the south, that would also absolutely work. But okay, that's a rundown of Egypt. The list land is good. There are good granary of the Mediterranean modifiers. We've got some market town centers of trade. Good stuff all around. Where do the Germans come in? Well, for that, we actually want to take a look at this state of the Delta here, namely the Nile Delta. It's a very interesting state because it does only have 3 provinces in it, but this state to me is an epiphany of no province here is perfect. What do I mean by that? Well, Alexandria here has a center of trade and it's a farmland, and it has a decent trade good of spices as well. It does become eventually nice, but not the best trade good, and more crucially, it does not have the granary of the Mediterranean modifier. So it has almost everything going for it apart from missing the granary of the Mediterranean modifier. Okay, Rashid is a great province. It is a natural harbour. It is grain, but it is a granary of the Mediterranean, so that's nice. Unfortunately, it is a marsh. And finally, we have the province of Dumayat. Dumayat is fascinating. It is a farmland, it is a grain, it is an estuary for +5 trade power in the same way that the Nile estuary is, and of course it is also a granary of the Mediterranean. However, it is missing a centre of trade. If we could have a centre of trade on this province, it would be practically perfect. You might be able to see where this is going already. Because before we set off, as the Germans, to the Egyptian Delta, well, we need to go and pick up some bonuses from home to make our stay just that little bit better. And the country of choice for the start of our journey is going to be Landshut or any other of the Bavarian miners. Because all of them, Landshut here, for example, or Munich, all have the Develop Scope Capital mission. So what happens when we do develop said capital? Well, it's going to create a level 1 center of trade in said capital. However, what if we move our capital to the province we were talking about earlier? As you can see here, it's the granary of the Mediterranean and some Nile estuary. Once it's made our capital, well, we can, of course, go ahead and develop it. Even the mission itself changes to develop it. And it's going to create a level 1 center of trade there. 25 development and having 5 buildings isn't technically a trivial task, don't get me wrong, but it's absolutely doable. Especially since it's a coastal province, so you have access to shipyards and docks as well. Now, ironically, if we're really tryharding, this technically isn't the best place to spawn a center of trade level 3, because of course this state has already got a bunch of centers of trade, so it's slightly redundant. And it's not an inland center of trade. If we take a look at the inland centers like these market towns, when they go to level 3, as you can see here, they're going to give the provinces in the area 33% local manpower modifier, something that coastal centers do not provide. However, Egypt, outside of the actual estuary itself, actually has a lot of places that don't have centers of trade. And hence I'd like to introduce this state over here. It has 5 provinces, which can all eventually be devved, although granted 3 of these are desert, so a bit of a harder thing to do, but at least 2 are drylands. But if you spawn your center of trade within this state, you'll be able to get 33% extra manpower on 5 extra provinces, which is quite nice. If you want to focus your development a bit more, I'd also recommend spawning it within these 3 provinces. They're all at least drylands, so pretty devable, and hence you can have a bit of an easier time getting it to a higher enough count, and as such utilizing level 3 trade center as well. But if we want to really make one state amazing and have a Granary of the Mediterranean center of trade, I'd recommend going for this province. And indeed, we're going to be double dipping our value from this province. What do I mean by that? Well, we're going to go ahead and form the next step of our German heritage. That is, of course, going to be the Hanseatic League. I've tabbed it into Lübeck here because they have the same mission tree. And that's because the Lübeck missions have this beautiful mission here called Develop the Mineral Trade, which spawns a bunch of tax, production, and manpower in Lübeck and changes the trade good in Lübeck to gold. Very strong, very nice, comes with local dev cost modifier and even some local gold depletion chance. Very neat. Here's the problem, this mission scopes to your capital, which means once we formed the Hanseatic League, capped our capital and Demeter, and completed all the prerequisite missions as well as this mission specifically, well, we're going to go ahead and spawn gold on this province. That is, of course, really stupid, because this is now a farmland gold, which is going to have a center of trade from our previous Saxon missions, and of course, it's still the Granary of the Mediterranean. The Nile is so productive, we are literally growing gold out of the ground. Truly poetic, brings a new meaning to the word cash crops. But yeah, this is really powerful and really stupid. This is technically not the best you can do. Spawning gold on Dallas-Kogan is the classic, as you're able to get +9 goods produced from the Farland copper mine, and let's be honest, it's also a bit closer to Lübeck. However, digging gold out of the ground, you know, it's already a copper mine, we just found a gold deposit. That's a bit less unhinged. Growing literal gold out of the ground, though, now that is worthy of being unhinged enough for this. And the best part is, of course, is that it comes with a modifier called Center of Mineral Trade, which gives us -5% local dev cost modifier, already an excellent bonus, but also -25% local gold depletion chance modifier, which we're able to combine with the economic idea bonus of -25% gold depletion chance, meaning our gold depletion chance is already reduced by another 25%. Nice, you have -50% gold depletion chance. Pretty neat, but of course we haven't quite left Germany yet. We have one final formable, the nation of Hungary, which is now a formable, used to not be the case, and when you form it now, you can go ahead and grab the Hungarian ideas. Ironically, it's rather good because you get the heretic and heathen provinces not given any penalties, so you can actually keep all of Egypt Sunni for some very cursed roleplay. And yes, you don't get any dev cost modifiers or anything of that nature, but you still pick up 5 discipline, cavalry to infantry ratio 25%, and 20 cavalry combat ability, as well as some Yeti army tradition decay, so you can do a interesting cavalry build. And the actual thing we're here for, of course, the -25% gold depletion chance. Now, this does reduce your gold depletion chance to -75% globally. Neat. We are missing one final little step, of course, and for that, I'm afraid we're going to have to be using the monument in Nitria, the Golden City. It does make our eventual borders look pretty ugly. What I'd actually suggest doing is set up like a Slovakia puppet or something of that nature, and just keeping the province of Nitria yourself, so that you have, I guess, an extra gold province that also doesn't deplete, but of course, the Golden City for the monument. Great for Gold Rush, an amazing monument all around, especially with that interest per annum reduction. What's not to love? Borders, though, could be better, but you know, when could they be worse? Don't look in this area and just pretend you don't have the monument, but indeed, that way you'll be able to secure a non-depleting source of gold on a farmland in the Nile Valley. So yeah, an absolutely cursed campaign. You'll have a German Egypt set up over here. Certainly fun. It's going to involve leaving Germany and campaigning through from Bavaria into the north to become Lübeck and the Hanseatic League, swinging by Hungary before you finally arrive as some kind of late Crusaders into the Egypt area. Set up the borders, well, up to you, but go ahead and make Damietta a city of the world's desire with gold characteristics. With that said, though, that is all the time I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching, with a special thank you to all my channel members, especially Ark, Solar, W Haste, Lemon, Star72, Lord Zendika, Nick Fassbender, Nanhatan, Nick Huss, Yorsum Rabbit, Bester Gaming, Grabbing Flavia, Sov, Mobkiller, Anthony35, AC Napa, Glorious Leader, Frankie, Yukata, Danray, Private Claw, Jack, Marvy, Conspiracy Pizza, and Lebarule.